Are you holding on to a penny that could be worth thousands, or even make you a millionaire? You might be, and not even know it yet. Today, we're diving into some of the rarest and most valuable Lincoln cents ever struck, coins that collectors are paying big bucks for right now. From mind-blowing mint errors to hard-to-find varieties hiding in plain sight, you'll want to check every penny you own after this. Welcome to HD Coins World, your home for the most exciting discoveries in US coin collecting. Let's get started. Number 1. Every coin has a story, but some tell a story worth a fortune. Now imagine this. You're sorting through a box of old coins or checking your pocket change, and there it is, a humble 1960 Lincoln penny. It's small, light, and easy to overlook. But what if that single coin, that 1 cent, held a secret worth tens of thousands of dollars? This is the mystery and magic behind the rare 1960 Lincoln cent with a double die obverse, one of the most valuable and exciting US 1 cent errors ever discovered. In 1960, the US Mint was under pressure. As coin demand exploded, mistakes began to slip through. One of those mistakes was the double die obverse, caused when the die, the metal stamp that impresses the coin design, was struck twice at slightly different angles during its creation. That tiny misalignment left a bold and unmistakable doubling effect on some coins. And when we say doubling, we don't mean the common, flat-looking machine doubling. No, this is sharp, clean, true doubling. You'll see it in the date, especially the 1 and 9, and in the words, liberty and in God we trust. A true double die looks like a shadow image layered directly behind the original, but there's more. The 1960 penny also came in 2 versions, a large date and a small date. It's the small date with the double die that collectors dream of. This combination is rare, incredibly rare, and it's why the coin can be worth so much. So, how can you spot one? First, check the date style. On the small date version, the top of the 9 is nearly level with the 6, and the 0 is narrow and tall. Then, examine the coin under magnification. If you see bold doubling in the lettering or numbers, you might be holding a jackpot in copper, and here's where it gets exciting. This error is so scarce, especially in higher grades, that collectors are constantly searching for it. In circulated condition, a verified 1960 small date double die penny can sell for $27,000 to $68,000. But that's just the start. At major auctions, some pristine examples of rare Lincoln cents, including other errors like the 1955 double die or 1969's double die, have shattered records, selling for over $500,000, even reaching into the millions for the finest known specimens. That's right. A 1 cent coin, sold for more than a house, more than most cars, more than many people earn in a lifetime. So don't underestimate that old jar of pennies sitting in your closet. Check your change. Dig into rolls. Look closely at every 1960 penny you find, because one of them could be your fortune in disguise. Grade your coin. Protect your coin. And when the time is right, sell your coin at auction. That 1 cent could be your ticket to $68,000, or even $500,000. Number 2. Sometimes, the biggest mistakes create the most valuable treasures. And in the case of the 1971 D. Lincoln penny, one such mistake made its way through the Denver Mint, not because of a double die, but because of a more dramatic and eye-catching error, an off-center strike. Most people glance at pennies without a second thought. But coin collectors? They look closer. Much closer. Because a coin that didn't strike just right can be worth far more than its face value. Let's talk about what went wrong, and why it matters. In 1971, the Denver Mint produced over 2.5 billion Lincoln cents. During such high-speed production, the coin blanks, called planchets, are supposed to sit perfectly centered between the dies before being struck. But occasionally, one slips out of position. When that happens, the die still comes down, stamping the coin, but the design lands off the mark. That's an off-center error, and the further off it is, the more valuable it becomes. For the 1971 D penny, this error is especially rare. not only because of how well the Denver Mint handled quality control, but because collectors didn't save many of these at the time. So when you find one today, it's a true numismatic survivor. Here's how to spot it. The most dramatic examples are 40% to 75% off-center. The design will look shifted or cut off, with part of the coin's surface blank or missing entirely. Some even show the date and mint mark only partially, making them even more collectible. The more off-center the strike, while still showing the date and mint mark, the higher the demand among collectors. Now here's the twist: not all off-center coins are valuable. A small misalignment, like 5% or 10%, is common and usually not worth much. But when the misstrike is severe, especially if it's centered enough to show 1971D, you're looking at something rare, visual, and valuable. And as always, condition is king. If your 1971D off-center penny is worn and circulated, it can still sell for solid money. But if it's in crisp, uncirculated condition, especially graded MS60 to MS65 or better, then you're in serious collector territory. So what's it worth? In today's market, a high-grade, dramatic off-center 1971D Lincoln penny has fetched between $12,000 to $60,000 at major auctions. That's not fantasy. That's real cash for a 1-cent coin, so check your jars, search your rolls, and study every penny. Because the next time you see a coin that looks off, it might just be your lucky strike. Grade your coin. Protect your coin. And when the time is right, sell your coin at auction. 1 cent could lead to a $60,000 payday. Number 3. Every so often, a tiny copper coin tells a story so rare, so unexpected, that it flips the world of coin collecting upside down. One such coin? The 1970 Lincoln penny, but not just any version. We're talking about a scarce mint error that can turn a regular-looking 1-cent piece into a collector's dream. Let's uncover the mystery behind the 1970s Lincoln penny with a small date and a rare, floating roof, and missing designer initials. A fascinating combination of minting quirks that make this coin one of the most talked about error varieties in U.S. numismatics. In 1970, the San Francisco Mint produced 2 types of Lincoln pennies, small date and large date varieties. At first glance, the difference is subtle, but collectors know that the small date version is much scarcer, especially when paired with a few specific errors that occurred during production. Now here's where it gets interesting. Some of these small date coins were struck with misaligned or overpolished dies, leading to 2 very collectible features. First, the floating roof, where the roof of the Lincoln Memorial appears to be suspended in midair, not touching the pillars below. Second, the missing designer initials, usually seen as FG, for Frank Gasparo, near the right side of the memorial. These errors weren't intentional. They happened because mint workers overpolished the dies to extend their use, accidentally removing parts of the design. But that mistake? It created a coin that sharp-eyed collectors now chase with intensity. So how do you identify one? Start with the date. The 0, in 1970 on the small date variety is narrow and level with this 7, while on the large date, it's wider and sits slightly lower. Once you've confirmed it's a small date, flip to the reverse. Use a magnifying glass to check the top of the Lincoln Memorial. If the roof doesn't connect to the sides, and the initials, FG, are faint or missing, you might be looking at a valuable mint error. It's important to note, not every floating roof or missing initial coin is a jackpot. But when these features appear together on a verified 1970s small date penny, that's where the real value lies. Combine that with a high grade, and you have a potential showstopper. Rarity, error variety, and condition all work together here. Coins in circulated condition with these features can still fetch strong interest from collectors. But when a 1970s small date with a clean strike and error features is graded in uncirculated condition, especially MS60 to MS65 or higher, auction houses light up. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, these rare 1970 Lincoln cents have sold for $10,000 to $64,000, depending on condition and clarity of the error. That's right, a single penny from 1970 could bring in more than most people's yearly salary. So check your change, look through your rolls, and examine every 1970 penny carefully, because somewhere out there, a copper coin with a floating roof could be your ticket to a hidden fortune. Grade your coin. Protect your coin. And when the time is right, sell your coin at auction. 1 cent might just be your $64,000 win. Number 4. You might think that by 1966, after decades of producing the Lincoln cent, the U.S. Mint had the process down to perfection. But sometimes, even in the most well-oiled systems, rare mistakes still slip through, and those mistakes can turn a single penny into a coin collector's goldmine. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of the 1966 Lincoln cent, and one particular type of error that makes some of these coins extremely valuable: the clipped planchet error. So what exactly is a clipped planchet? Before a coin is struck, round metal blanks, called planchets, are punched out of large sheets of metal. Sometimes, those sheets are misfed into the press, or the punching machine cuts too close to the edge of the sheet. When this happens, a planchet might be punched where part of the metal is already missing, resulting in a blank with a clip taken out of it. If the clipped blank makes it all the way through the minting process, the result is a coin with a distinctive curved or straight chunk missing, a clipped planchet error. Now, the 1966 Lincoln cent isn't known for many dramatic errors, especially since it was struck in the middle of the U.S. Mint's efforts to stabilize coin production after the Coinage Act of 1965. That act eliminated mint marks and changed coin compositions, so the mint was under pressure to deliver smooth, consistent output. That's what makes a 1966 clipped planchet penny so intriguing. It's a rare mistake during a time when mistakes were supposed to be nearly impossible. So how do you identify one? Look carefully at the coin's edge. A genuine clipped planchet will usually have a clean, rounded notch taken out of the rim. On curved clips, you'll often see a phenomenon called a blowout, or finning, where the metal slightly bulges near the clip due to uneven striking pressure. Another sign is the Blakesley effect, a weakness in the rim directly opposite the clip, where the coin didn't fully strike because part of the planchet was missing. These markers help authenticate the clip and prove it wasn't damaged after minting. A real mint error carries far more value than a post-mint mishap. Collectors love these coins because they show a clear, visible mistake, a physical reminder of the minting process gone awry. And when it's from a year like 1966, where few high-quality errors are known to exist, demand can be surprisingly strong. Now let's talk value. If your 1966 Lincoln penny with a clipped planchet is in circulated condition, it might already be worth hundreds, especially if the clip is dramatic and the date is still visible. But the real money is in uncirculated examples, particularly those graded MS60 to MS65 or higher. Depending on the sharpness of the strike, visibility of the error, and overall preservation, these rare clipped planchet 1966 cents have sold for $6,460 to as much as $62,000 in auctions. That's right, one small missing piece can lead to one big payday, so don't overlook your pennies. Flip them. Inspect their edges. Study their shapes. Because the next time you spot a coin that's missing a corner, you might just be looking at a fortune in disguise. Grade your coin. Protect your coin. And when the time is right, sell your coin at auction. That 1966 penny in your hand could be worth a whole lot more than 1 cent. Number 5. Sometimes, the most unexpected treasures are hiding in plain sight, like an ordinary-looking 1978 Lincoln penny that could be worth thousands. But what turns this everyday coin into a rare collectible? It all comes down to a dramatic mint error that collectors love: the off-center strike. In 1978, the U.S. Mint was producing millions of Lincoln cents, fast and efficiently. But even the most precise machines can slip. And when a blank planchet isn't properly seated in the coin press, the die strikes it off-center. Instead of a perfectly round, centered image, you get a coin where part of the design is shifted, and part is completely missing. That's an off-center error, and in some cases, it's pure numismatic gold. Now here's what makes the 1978 off-center Lincoln penny so interesting. Most coins with minor off-center strikes, say 5% or less, aren't worth much. But when the off-center strike is dramatic, 40%, 50%, even 60%, and the date is still clearly visible, collectors take notice. A full date is key because it confirms the coin's identity and separates it from generic errors. Spotting this error is surprisingly simple. Look at the penny's design. If the Lincoln portrait and lettering are pushed to one side, and a blank crescent of copper remains on the other side, that's a clear sign of an off-center strike. Some examples even show a large curved blank area with just a portion of Lincoln's bust. These are highly prized. The 1978 off-center penny becomes even more valuable when it's well preserved. Mint state examples, with full red luster and little to no wear, are especially scarce. The cleaner the strike and more dramatic the misalignment, the higher the demand. But why are these coins so valuable? First, they're eye-catching. A collector browsing a coin show or auction table will immediately notice an off-center coin. Second, they're a physical reminder of the minting process, and how rare mistakes like this can sneak through quality control. Finally, these errors are simply fun to collect. No two are exactly the same, and that uniqueness adds to their charm and value. So how much can a 1978 off-center Lincoln penny bring? In circulated condition, a strong off-center strike with a visible date can easily command hundreds. But in uncirculated grades, especially coins graded MS-60 to MS-65 or higher, prices rise quickly. At auction, these coins have sold for $4,600 to as much as $52,000, depending on the degree of the error, clarity of the date, and overall condition. Not bad for a penny that looks like it came out of the press sideways. So don't ignore the odd-looking coins in your pocket change. Check every cent. Because what looks like a mistake might actually be a fortune waiting to be found. Grade your coin. Protect your coin. And when the moment comes, sell your coin at auction. That 1978 Lincoln penny could turn into a serious payday. Number 6. You might not think twice about a 1981 Lincoln penny. It looks ordinary, feels familiar, and chances are you've passed by hundreds without a second glance. But what if I told you one of those pennies could be worth thousands, not because of its age, but because of a rare and dramatic minting mistake? Let's talk about the broadstrike error, a fascinating misstep in the minting process that transforms an ordinary coin into a collector's dream. And in the case of the 1981 Lincoln cent, it's one of the most sought-after errors from that era. Here's what happens. Normally, when a coin is struck, it's held in place by a retaining collar, a metal ring that keeps the planchet perfectly centered and gives the coin its smooth, uniform edge. But sometimes, that collar fails to engage. When that happens, the press still strikes the coin, but without that tight boundary, the metal spreads outward, resulting in a coin that's broader, flatter, and missing the typical raised rim. Now, a broad strike alone doesn't always make a coin valuable. But when it's clean, dramatic, and uncirculated, especially on a 1981 penny, you're looking at something rare. Why does the 1981 stand out? For starters, the Denver Mint was known for high production volume, not necessarily for minting mistakes. That means genuine broad-struck coins from this mint and year are relatively scarce. Combine that rarity with a fully readable date and mint mark, which are often distorted in errors, and you've got a highly collectible specimen. To identify a broad-struck 1981 penny, look for a coin that seems stretched or slightly warped. The edges won't have the usual rim, and the coin may appear wider than normal. But the key indicators of value are a full, clear strike, complete design details, and a visible mint mark. Now, why do collectors chase after these? Simple. Broad-struck coins offer a dramatic, visible error. They show the minting process at its most vulnerable. And when that error happens to an otherwise common coin like a 1981 penny, it creates a unique piece of history that stands apart from millions of ordinary examples. Let's talk numbers. If your 1981 broadstrike Lincoln penny has been in circulation but still shows the error clearly, it might bring a few hundred to a couple $1,000s. But the real magic is in coins graded MS-60 to MS-65 or higher. In these high grades, with full red color and sharp detail, these rare pennies have sold for $4,000 to $28,000 at auction, depending on the severity of the error and eye appeal. So before you spend your spare change, take a second look at your pennies. A wider than normal coin with no raised rim might just be your hidden fortune. Get it graded. Store it safely. And when you're ready, sell it at auction. That strange little 1981 cent might just be worth a whole lot more than 1 cent. Number 7. There's a special kind of thrill that comes with finding something valuable where you least expect it. And for coin collectors across the country, the humble 1967 Lincoln penny holds that exact kind of hidden promise, especially when a rare and eye-catching mint era comes into play. Today, we're talking about the clipped planchet error, one of the most visually obvious and collectible mistakes in the world of U.S. coins. And in the case of the 1967 Lincoln cent, this error turns a common coin into a small copper fortune. Let's start with how it happens. Every penny begins its life as a blank metal disc, called a planchet, punched out of long metal strips. But sometimes, those punches overlap or misalign. The result? A planchet that's missing a chunk, often shaped like a crescent, or a clean bite taken out of the edge. That's a clipped planchet error, and when the mint doesn't catch it in time, it gets struck just like any other coin and released into circulation. The 1967 Lincoln penny was struck during a transitional time in U.S. coinage. It was a year without any mint marks, due to a policy by the mint aimed at discouraging coin hoarding. That already makes 1967 cents stand out in numismatic history. But a clipped planchet on this coin? That's where things get exciting. So how do you know if you've found one? Take a close look at the edge of your 1967 penny. A genuine clipped planchet will show a curved or straight-edged piece missing, with no sign of tampering or post-mint damage. What really proves authenticity is a phenomenon called the Blakesley effect, a soft, weak rim directly opposite the clip, caused by how the metal flows during striking. That's the mark of a true mint error. Collectors love these coins not only for their rarity, but also because each clipped planchet is a little different. Some are minor, with small nicks. Others are dramatic, with huge crescent cuts that grab your attention instantly. The more dramatic the clip, and the better the condition of the coin, the higher the value. But clipped planchets are only part of the story. In some rare cases, 1967 pennies with other striking errors, like misaligned dies or even multiple errors on the same coin, have surfaced, and those specimens can fetch staggering prices at auction. Now for the numbers. If your 1967 clipped planchet penny is circulated but still clear and dramatic, it might bring a few $100s. But in uncirculated condition, especially MS60 to MS65 or higher, with a strong strike and full red luster, prices climb fast. At major auction houses, rare 1967 era pennies have sold between $6,275 and $61,000, depending on condition, rarity, and eye appeal. So before you pass over another copper cent, take a second look. That little flaw in the rim? It could be your hidden treasure. Grade your coin. Protect your coin. And when the time is right, sell your coin at auction. Because one 1967 penny with the right kind of mistake might just be worth a small fortune. Number 8. Every once in a while, an ordinary-looking coin ends up holding an extraordinary secret, and the 1970 Lincoln penny is one of those surprises hiding in plain sight. At first glance, it might seem like just another copper cent from the Denver Mint. But to sharp-eyed collectors, certain 1970 pennies are anything but ordinary. In fact, some rare era varieties from this year have stunned experts and fetched tens of thousands of dollars at auction. So what makes the 1970 Lincoln cent so special? This story revolves around an error that's as fascinating as it is visually dramatic: the off-center strike. Picture this. A blank planchet enters the coining press, but something's off. It doesn't line up correctly between the dies. The result? The design is struck too far to one side, leaving part of the coin blank and the image shifted. Off-center errors can happen on any coin, but not all are valuable. The real treasures are those that are severely off-center yet still show the full date and mint mark. And that's exactly what collectors hunt for on the 1970 penny. If the date is missing, the value drops. But if you can clearly read 1970 and see the D mint mark from Denver, you've got something special. Now here's the twist. The 1970 penny wasn't supposed to be rare. Over 2.6 billion were minted. But finding a dramatic off-center strike, especially in pristine, uncirculated condition, is a needle in a haystack situation. That's what makes this coin such a hidden gem. It's a classic case of mass production meeting a 1 in a million mint mistake. So how do you identify a genuine off-center 1970 Lincoln cent? Look for a noticeable blank area where part of the design is missing. In moderate examples, you might see 10 to 30% of the coin unstruck. In rare, dramatic cases, 50% or more of the coin is blank, and yet the date and mint mark are still fully visible. That combination, dramatic shift, visible date, and Denver, D, is the winning ticket. Now add condition to the mix. If the coin is worn, circulated, or damaged, it may still be interesting but won't command top dollar. But a 1970 off-center penny in MS60 to MS65 or higher, with brilliant red luster and sharp details, that's a collector's dream. The redder, cleaner, and more complete the strike, the more valuable your coin becomes. Let's talk numbers. Circulated 1970 Lincoln pennies with a clear off-center error can fetch a few $100s. But in mint state, especially MS63 to MS65 or higher, these rare error coins have sold for $10,000 to $65,000 at major coin auctions. And believe it or not, some ultra-rare Lincoln cents from other years, in flawless condition with dramatic errors, have crossed the $500,000 mark in high-stakes sales. So before you toss another penny into your change jar, take a closer look. That crooked strike or unusual gap could be more than just a flaw. It could be your hidden fortune. Grade your coin. Protect it. And when the time is right, sell your coin at auction. Because sometimes, one little mistake at the mint can turn a 1-cent piece into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Number 9. In 1982, something unusual happened at the U.S. Mint, something that forever changed the Lincoln penny. It was a year of transition, a year that introduced multiple varieties, and one that left collectors with a complex puzzle. But buried in that chaos is one coin that has become a modern-day treasure, the 1982 Lincoln cent with a rare transitional error that's both fascinating and incredibly valuable. Let's rewind. Before 1982, pennies were made of 95% copper. But with rising copper prices, the U.S. Mint made a big decision: switch to a cheaper core of zinc, coated in copper, which made the coins much lighter. The change happened midway through the year. As a result, 7 different varieties of 1982 pennies exist, some copper, some zinc, some with large dates, some with small dates. But the one that stuns collectors the most? The 1982 small date struck on a copper planchet, a coin that, officially, shouldn't exist. Here's why. Denver was only supposed to strike zinc pennies in 1982 with the small date style. But a few leftover copper planchets somehow got fed into the presses. The result was a Lincoln cent with a Denver mint mark, small date features, and a heavier copper composition, a combination that was never meant to happen. This is what we call a transitional error, when a coin is struck with the wrong metal during a shift in composition. It's rare. It's exciting. And it turns a common coin into a collector's dream. So how can you spot one? You'll need a good eye, a small scale, and some patience. First, look for the small date style on the obverse. The 2 in 1982 will curl slightly and sit higher than the 1. Then check the mint mark. It should be a clear D for Denver. Now for the most important test: weigh the coin. If it weighs around 3.11 grams, it's copper. If it's closer to 2.5 grams, it's the more common zinc. Finding a 1982 small date that weighs 3.11 grams? That's a jackpot. And just how rare is this error? Extremely. Only a few confirmed examples are known. Most 1982 pennies are zinc. Finding one struck on a copper planchet with a small date is like finding a needle in a haystack. Some experts believe many are still out there, hidden in penny jars, collections, or pocket change, just waiting to be discovered. Now let's talk about value. If you find one in circulated condition, even with some wear, it could be worth thousands. But if you're lucky enough to have a clean, Uncirculated example in MS60 to MS65 or higher, you're looking at a serious payday. These ultra-rare coins have sold at auction for $3,800 to $27,000, depending on their condition, and I appeal. So before you dismiss that old 1982 penny, take a closer look. Weigh it. Study the date. Check the mint mark. Because one simple coin from 1982 could be more than just spare change. It could be your ticket to a hidden fortune. Grade your coin, protect it, and when the time is right, sell your coin at auction, because the smallest details sometimes hide the greatest rewards. Number 10. In the world of US coin collecting, every once in a while, a coin turns up that defies expectations, a simple penny that tells a complicated story. And among the quiet legends hiding in plain sight is the 1975 Lincoln penny with a dramatic off-center strike. At first glance, it might look like a mistake. But to collectors, that mistake can mean thousands of dollars. Let's dive into what makes the 1975 penny with this era so special. Most of the time, coins are struck precisely, centered, clean, and uniform. But sometimes, a blank coin planchet isn't properly seated in the coin press. When the dies come down to strike it, part of the design lands off the edge, leaving part of the coin blank. That's what we call an off-center error, and the more dramatic the shift, the more valuable the coin. Now, the 1975 penny already has some historical weight. Struck at the Denver Mint, it was part of the final stretch before the U.S. bicentennial celebrations kicked off. But the real treasure here lies in how far off-center the strike is, and whether the date and mint mark are still visible. Collectors prize off-center coins with a perfect balance. The error must be dramatic enough to notice, usually 40% or more off-center, but still show the full date and mint mark. That's what makes it both a novelty and a traceable rarity. Proof that the coin is authentic, mint-made, and tied to a specific place and year. On a 1975 Lincoln cent with this error, the features you're looking for include a visible 1975 date and a clear D mint mark, often seen drifting toward the coin's edge. The blank area on the coin, where no design was struck, will look like a smooth crescent of copper, adding a strange beauty to the piece. Off-center errors like this happen in a flash, just a split-second slip in the machinery at the mint. But when it results in a coin like this, collectors take notice. Especially when we're talking about a date as significant as 1975, and a mint that produced hundreds of millions of cents, with very few known major errors. So, how rare is it? Well, coins with mild off-center strikes are common, but the ones that are 40%, 50%, even 60% off-center, with full date and mint mark still intact, are far scarcer. And with the growing interest in dramatic mint errors, the demand has never been higher. Now, let's talk value. A circulated 1975 off-center penny might fetch a few $100s. But if you've got one that's sharply struck, off-center by 50% or more, and in mint state condition, MS60 to MS65 or better, it could be worth anywhere between $4,200 to $48,000 depending on rarity, sharpness, and market interest. That's no small change. Collectors love these coins because they're visual, dramatic, and undeniable evidence of real mint errors. And with auction houses seeing growing bids on high-grade off-center Lincolns, a coin like this could one day join the ranks of those that sell for six figures. So check your pocket change, your old penny jars, and your childhood coin collections. That strange-looking 1975 penny that you thought was damaged? It might just be a valuable error. Grade your coin, protect it, and if you're lucky enough to find one in lush condition, sell your coin at auction, because sometimes fortune hides in the flaws. Number 11. In the world of Lincoln cents, the year 1984 holds a quiet secret, a rare error that turned ordinary pennies into prized possessions. If you've ever come across a 1984 Lincoln penny and didn't give it a second glance, it might be time to look again, because some of these coins carry a rare and dramatic flaw known as the extra ear error. This strange and collectible mistake starts at the US Mint, during the die creation process. Every coin starts with a die, a hardened steel stamp used to strike thousands of coins. But when a die is improperly created or damaged, it can result in a die clash or die doubling, where extra impressions are unintentionally transferred onto the coin. In the case of the 1984 penny, it's a very specific and bizarre type of die doubling, one that makes it look like Abraham Lincoln has an extra earlobe hanging just below his real one. That's right. This coin is famous for what collectors call the extra ear variety. It's not a joke, it's a legit mint error, and it's easy to miss unless you know what to look for. To identify one, you'll need to examine Lincoln's ear on the obverse, or front, of the coin. Just below the actual earlobe, there's a faint but noticeable secondary earlobe shape, a curved form that mirrors the one above it. It almost looks like Lincoln was struck twice, but it's not an accidental double strike. It's the result of die doubling, and it's limited to a relatively small number of coins released in 1984. Now, not all doubling is created equal. Some coins have minor anomalies that aren't considered true doubled dies. But the 1984 extra ear penny stands out because the error is clearly visible to the naked eye, and that's what makes it so desirable. Collectors crave strong, obvious errors, and the extra ear is one of the best known among modern Lincoln cents. These coins are especially rare in high grades. Most examples were spent and circulated before anyone noticed the flaw. So when a mint state example shows up, especially with sharp details and a clean surface, it draws serious attention from numismatists. The error itself is dramatic, the coin is relatively modern and easy to relate to, and it has the backing of years of documented collector interest. It's the kind of coin that can easily slip through your fingers, literally, and end up being worth far more than 1 cent. And now, let's talk numbers. A circulated 1984 Lincoln extra ear penny might bring in a few $100s. But if you've got a pristine example, graded MS-60 or better, the value climbs sharply. In recent auctions, these coins have fetched anywhere from $3,200 to $38,000, depending on their condition and strike quality. So next time you're looking through your change or flipping through an old coin folder, take a close look at Lincoln's ear. If you see something unusual, an extra curve, a doubled lobe, you just might be holding a rare piece of US mint history. Because in the world of coins, even the smallest detail can lead to a fortune. Number 12. Every so often, the US Mint makes a mistake that turns an ordinary penny into a numismatic treasure. And in the case of the 1972 D. Lincoln penny, we're not talking about the well-known Philadelphia double die. We're diving into something even more intriguing, a rare off-center strike from the Denver Mint that has collectors across the country searching their pocket change with renewed excitement. Now, here's what makes the 1972 D penny stand out. Most coins are struck precisely in the center of a blank planchet. That's the small metal disc used to make a coin. But when the planchet isn't fed into the press correctly, the die still strikes. Only now the design lands off the mark. This creates what collectors call an off-center error. In the case of the 1972 D. Lincoln cent, some of these errors are dramatic, with up to 40% or more of the design missing, and a clear crescent-shaped blank area on one side. But the key is balance. Collectors especially love off-center coins where the date and mint mark, in this case 1972 D, are still fully visible. That's critical because it tells us when and where the coin was made, which adds serious value. Off-center strikes can happen for a number of reasons. Maybe the coin blank wasn't properly aligned, or the machinery feeding the planchets into the press malfunctioned for a brief moment. These mishaps are rare, especially at the Denver Mint, which was known for its tight quality control in the 1970s. That's why a 1972 D penny with a bold off-center strike is so highly prized. Not only is it unusual, it's unexpected. To identify one, start by looking at the coin's shape. Is it slightly misshapen? Does part of the design appear to be sliding off the edge? Then check if the date and D mint mark are still visible. If so, you may be holding a collector's dream. These coins are exciting because each off-center strike is unique. No two are exactly the same. Some may be 5% off-center, some 10%, others 40% or more. The greater the off-center percentage with a visible date, the higher the value. Why does this matter to collectors? Because these errors are visual, dramatic, and impossible to fake easily. They show up clearly without magnification and are immediately recognizable, making them a favorite at shows and in personal collections. And here's the best part. These off-center 1972 D Lincoln cents have crossed auction blocks for impressive sums. In lower grades or circulated condition, you might see them sell for hundreds. But high-grade examples, with a clean surface and 30 to 50% off-center, especially those graded MS60 through MS65, have brought between $7,400 and $63,000 at public auctions. So, keep your eyes peeled. That slightly odd-looking penny from 1972 might just be your ticket to one of the most visually stunning and valuable errors in modern coin history. Sometimes, being off-center is exactly what makes a coin stand out. Number 13. Most pennies slip through our fingers without a second glance. But every now and then, one of them carries a secret, a mistake so rare that collectors will pay thousands to own it. That's exactly the case with the 1980 Lincoln penny. On the surface, it looks like any other cent from the early 1980s. But hidden among the billions struck that year lies a dramatic error that sets this coin apart: the clipped planchet error. Let's rewind for a moment. Before a penny becomes a penny, it starts as a round blank of copper-plated zinc called a planchet. These blanks are punched out from large metal sheets in rapid succession. But if the sheet isn't advanced properly between punches, the machine can accidentally clip into an area that's already been punched. The result? A coin blank with a curved piece missing from its edge, what we call a clipped planchet. When that flawed blank makes it through the striking process, the coin emerges with a telltale crescent-shaped bite missing from its side. And in the case of the 1980 Lincoln cent, that missing piece tells a fascinating story. You see, errors like these were supposed to be caught by the mint's quality control teams. But when they slip past unnoticed, they become instant collectibles, especially when they come from a high mintage year like 1980, when the Denver and Philadelphia mints were producing billions of coins. So, how do you spot a genuine clipped planchet penny from 1980? First, look for a clean, curved cut along the rim, almost like a chunk was taken out of the edge. That missing piece should show signs of the coin being struck. The metal near the clip may be slightly stretched or distorted. Also, check for what collectors call the Blakesley effect. That's when the rim directly opposite the clip appears weak or flat. It's a natural result of how metal flows during striking and is one of the clearest indicators that you've got a real error coin and not just post-mint damage. Another tip? Make sure the date and mint mark are still clearly visible. That adds to both the coin's desirability and its value. Collectors are especially drawn to error coins that still show all the critical details, like Abraham Lincoln's full portrait, the date, 1980, and the word, Liberty. Now, here's where things get exciting. Most 1980 pennies are only worth face value. But one with a dramatic clipped planchet error, especially if it's in excellent condition, becomes something entirely different. It's not just a penny, it's a conversation starter, a museum piece, a window into how even the most powerful minting machines can make mistakes. And when these coins hit the market, the prices speak volumes. Circulated examples with moderate clips can fetch hundreds. But uncirculated specimens, graded MS60 to MS65 or higher, with clear and dramatic clips, have sold at auction for between $4,300 and $51,000. So the next time you see a 1980 penny, look closer. If it's missing a bite but still shows all the right details, you just might be holding a rare minting mistake, and a coin worth far more than just 1 cent. Number 14. Most people think of pennies as simple copper coins, nothing more than pocket change. But sometimes, one of those ordinary-looking cents carries a minting mistake so fascinating, and so valuable, it turns the coin world upside down. That's exactly what happened with the 1974 Lincoln penny, a coin that hides one of the most intriguing and collectible errors ever discovered, the off-center strike. In 1974, the U.S. Mint was striking hundreds of millions of Lincoln pennies. These coins were supposed to be perfectly aligned inside the coin press, positioned just right so that the dies would imprint the design evenly on both sides. But every now and then, a blank planchet would enter the chamber misaligned, off to the side or not centered between the dies. When the dies came down, they stamped the design partially onto the blank, leaving the rest blank or only lightly struck. This is what we call an off-center error. The degree of the off-center strike makes all the difference. A minor shift of just 5 or 10% isn't worth much. But when the coin is struck 30, 40, or even 50% off-center, and still shows a full date and mint mark, that's when collectors take notice. These dramatic errors are highly desirable, especially from a year like 1974. Now, here's why this error matters. Most of the time, the US Mint catches these flawed coins before they leave the facility. They're supposed to be rejected, melted down, and never make it into circulation. But a few manage to slip through, either accidentally or, in very rare cases, intentionally smuggled out. Those few survivors are incredibly scarce, making them prime targets for collectors of error coins. So how can you tell if you've got a valuable 1974 off-center Lincoln penny? Start by checking the date. The more off-center the strike, the harder it is to see the year. If the date is still fully visible, despite a dramatic off-center appearance, that's a major plus. Next, look for strong details on the portion of the coin that was struck. Sharp lettering, defined parts of Lincoln's portrait, or clear reverse details increase the value. And of course, the more blank space left on the coin, the more dramatic the error. Also, note whether the coin was struck on a bronze or copper-plated zinc planchet. 1974 was a year of experimentation, and while most circulating cents were bronze, some test pieces were struck on aluminum and other materials. Those experimental pieces are incredibly rare, but even the regular off-center bronze cents can be extremely valuable if the error is dramatic and the condition is solid. As always, condition plays a big role. A 1974 penny with a minor off-center strike in circulated condition may fetch a modest sum. But if you've got one in uncirculated condition, graded MS60 to MS65 or higher, with a bold, 50% off-center strike and a clear date, that's where the real money comes in. Auction records show that examples of the 1974 off-center Lincoln cent have sold for between $4,500 and $47,000, depending on how extreme the error is and the coin's overall quality. So check your coin jars, your change drawers, and those old rolls of pennies. You never know when one misaligned moment at the mint in 1974 might reward you with a tiny treasure worth thousands. Number 15. In the world of coin collecting, there's a special thrill in discovering a coin that never should have made it out of the mint. One tiny flaw, barely noticeable to the untrained eye, can transform a common penny into a rare treasure. And today, we're diving into one such oddity, the 1976 Lincoln penny, a coin from the nation's bicentennial year that sometimes carries a mistake worth thousands. Now, let's talk about one of the most fascinating errors found on this coin, the clipped planchet. Before a coin is struck, it starts as a blank metal disc called a planchet. These planchets are punched out of large sheets of metal, but once in a while, a misfeed or mechanical hiccup causes a blank to be cut too close to the edge of the sheet, or even overlapping another blank. The result? A coin with a visible piece missing, usually along a curved edge. That's a clipped planchet error. On the 1976 Lincoln penny, these clipped planchet errors can range from small bites out of the rim to dramatic crescent-shaped gaps. But not all clips are created equal. The most desirable examples are those that are clearly visible, affect a significant portion of the coin, and show natural signs like a smooth, curved edge where the clip occurred, along with a phenomenon called a blowout, or distortion in the nearby design, caused by the missing metal during striking. So how rare is this error? Well, the mint produces billions of pennies, and only a handful of clipped planchet errors escape quality control. The majority get caught and recycled long before they can enter circulation. That makes any genuine clipped planchet, especially one from a memorable year like 1976, an exciting find. Collectors love these kinds of mistakes not just for their rarity, but for what they reveal, a moment when the machines faltered and human oversight slipped. It's like holding a small piece of minting history in your hand. And when that error occurs during a year already steeped in American pride and celebration, like the bicentennial, it makes the coin even more attractive. To identify a real 1976 clipped planchet penny, look closely at the clipped edge. It should be smooth and clean, not jagged or damaged from post-mint wear. The coin's rim near the clip may also look distorted, with the design stretched or weakened. Some even display what's called a Blakesley effect, a flattening or weakness on the opposite side of the clip, which helps confirm authenticity. Condition, of course, plays a huge role in value. Circulated examples with minor clips might sell modestly, but uncirculated coins, graded MS60 through MS65 or higher, with dramatic clips and strong eye appeal can command serious premiums. Auction results have shown that a 1976 Lincoln penny with a well-defined clipped planchet error has sold for between $4,300 and $42,000, depending on the severity of the clip and the coin's overall grade. So the next time you're sifting through old penny rolls, keep an eye out for missing pieces. Because when it comes to rare coins, sometimes what's not there is exactly what makes it valuable.